everyone, welcome back to my video. In this video, I will tell you about an interesting topic, but before that, let me introduce myself. My name is Yuni Revita, with student number A1B022001. So, let's start. Have you ever read the story such as The Lion and the Mouse, Malin Kundang, Sleeping Beauty, and Cinderella? So, these are all examples of the text that I will discuss in this video. So, from the example, what is our topic today? Our topic is narrative text. In this video, I will discuss all about narrative text, the definition, the structure, the language features, characteristic, and the last is the example of narrative text. So, for the first is definition of narrative text. A narrative text is a kind of text that tells a story or describes a sequence of events. The purpose of this text is to entertain and inform the reader by presenting a series of events in a coherent and engaging way. How about the generic structure of narrative text? There are 4 generic structures of narrative text. So the first is orientation. Orientation is the opening part of narrative text. It introduces the character in the story and the setting of the story, which include the place, time, atmosphere, and social condition. The second structure is complication. This section contains the problem that occurred in a story. So, complication divided into 3 parts. For the first is rising action. Rising action is problem begin to arise. And the second is climax. Climax is the peak of the problem. And the last is falling action. Falling action is the tension of the problem begin to decrease and it begins to find a resolution. The third structure is resolution. This section contains the resolution or end of narrative text. A story can end with happy ending, sad ending, or cliffhanger. The last structure is reorientation. Reorientation contains a conclusion, moral message, or change in character at the end of the story. This part is optional because we can infer the moral value at the end after we read the story until the end. We move to the kind of narrative text. There are a lot of kind of narrative text. Let's discuss about it. For the first is mystery. Mystery is a story about solving the problem of a mystery. For example, story is the gold bug. And then fairy tales. Fairy tales are told from time to time and tell story about fairies, princesses, princes, and other. And then example is Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast. And folktale. Folktale is a story that has been passed down from generation to the generation until it becomes part of the community's tradition. Example of folktale story is Bawang Merah and Bawang Putih and then the Legend of Robin Hood. Narrative text have romance story. Romance story is a type of narrative text that focuses on the story of a couple love struggle. An example of romance story is Romeo and Juliet. Science fiction. Science fiction is story about science and technology that exceed reality. An example of science fiction story is The Time Machine. And then adventure story. Adventure story is story about adventures. For example of adventure story is The Treasure of Pirate Franks. And then the last, the fable. Fable is story with animal character. For example is The Lion and the Mouse. In the narrative text, there are elements that call language features. The language features of narrative text, for the first is using past tense. The use of past tense to convey the sequence of events in the story, and then using adverb of time. For example, are using one day, one time, and one upon a time, and the other, and then using adjective. Using adjective that provide description of the character or setting. For example, are beautiful princess, handsome boy, poor family, happy family, sad girl, and the other. And the last is using non-praise. Using non-praise in the narrative text can be used to give More detailed description highlights certain part of character or setting, or explain complicated ideas concisely. Every text have their own characteristic. So now let's discuss about the characteristic of narrative text. Narrative text tell a story that take place in the past, and then it use noun to replace animals, people, or object in the story, and then they are usually stories that people already know and have developed in the society. For example is include Maling Kundang, the rabbit and turtle, and the last is the element of narrative text consists of time setting, place, story theme, character, atmosphere, conflict, and resolution. Now let's look the example of narrative text. The title is Sangkuriang and Takuban Perahu Munting. This example is very famous in Indonesia, so let's discuss about this example. For the first paragraph is orientation because it introduces the place and the character of the story. The place is in Priangan Land and the story and the character are Tumang, Dayang Sumbi, and then Sangkuriang. And next is complication. For paragraph second, third, and fourth is complication. And the last one is resolution. In the sentence, she found the way is resolution of the story of Sangkuriang and Taguban Perahu Munting. This story, there is no reorientation because we can get the moral value after we read the story until the end. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Bye-bye.